Coldplay in my place. Coming up, is there a dark side to bird watching? Bad behaviour, people chasing birds with large cameras. Radio 2 smart speaker sounds app and 88 to 91 FM.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Anthony Birchley. Inflation has fallen slightly but is still above 10%. A man who died of a blood clot after receiving the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine has had his cause of death changed. And a man has been arrested after he entered a zoo's rhino enclosure to take a bath. Big increases in the cost of some foods have kept inflation high despite a slight fall in the latest figures. It dropped to 10.1% in the year to March, down from 10.4% the previous month. It was widely expected to fall further. Experts say the fall was partly because of lower fuel costs, but soaring prices for bread, cereal and chocolate kept inflation high. Joe Hills is a wholesaler at a market in West London. He says the fall in fuel prices has helped, but it's not enough.
It's eased the price cost per box on what stuff is being delivered at by the lorry load. It has eased costs on things like that, so it's helped, but inflation is still there. But now things are coming into season, prices are easing, but they're not back down to where they was once previously.
Labour said the figures showed prices were out of control, but the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt insisted the government was still on track to halve inflation this year. The analyst Karen Ward, who's an advisor to Mr Hunt, said there are underlying issues which have to be addressed.
Pay growth is still pushing up, workers understandably wanting to be compensated for this higher cost of living. But of course, then what happens for small businesses, etc., is their costs have gone up with energy and now their wage bill's going up as well. So then they keep raising prices. And that's where we have this more persistent, lingering problem that I think people are getting increasingly concerned about in the UK.
A coroner in London has agreed to change the death certificate of a man who died 10 days after receiving the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine. The inquest heard from doctors who said it was overwhelmingly likely his death was induced by the jab in what was described as a terribly rare side effect. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson has been following proceedings.
In January 2021, Stephen Wright, an NHS psychologist who lived in Kent, was among the first wave of healthcare workers to be given a COVID vaccine. But 10 days after having the jab, the husband and father of 2 young boys died from a blood clot in his brain. His death certificate indicated he'd died of natural causes. Just months later, it became clear that although the AstraZeneca vaccine saved lives from COVID, it carried an extremely rare risk of fatal blood clots. Today, the coroner Andrew Harris agreed to change the cause of death to unintended complications of the vaccine.
Russia has been accused of making plans to cut crucial power and communication cables in the North Sea. A documentary by European broadcasters claims Russian ships have been touring the coastline around Scandinavia to mark out possible sabotage sites in the event of a war with NATO countries. One of the same ships has also been seen in UK waters. Our security correspondent Gordon Carrera reports.
In the last 6 months, Russian ships with their location transmitters turned off have been tracked around the North Sea, taking a particularly close interest in wind farms, according to the investigation. When one journalist on a small boat confronted a particular vessel, supposedly involved in oceanographic research, he was faced with a masked man carrying what looks like a Russian military assault rifle. The same research boat has also been seen in UK waters, with the BBC understanding that officials are aware of what they describe as undersea mapping.
Bank and Building Society customers across the UK have collectively saved nearly £1 billion because of changes to overdraft rules. The shake-up reduced high fees for borrowing and dropped complex charging structures, which made it harder for people to compare costs. The Financial Conduct Authority said the change meant customers saved on average £17.40 in 2021. A man has been arrested at a zoo in New Zealand after he scaled a barrier and took a leisurely bath in the rhino enclosure. Auckland Zoo's director said he was very relieved no animals or visitors had been hurt in the incident. Catherine Cracknell takes up the story.
Footage on social media shows stunned visitors to the zoo watching on as a man who some at first assumed was a keeper got into the water and began swimming and rinsing his hair. Eventually, staff managed to persuade him out and he was handed over to police. The zoo's director said the rhinos and antelopes had been startled, but fortunately had run in the opposite direction. Police said they hoped the man would get the help and support that he very clearly needed.
Finally, a look at the weather, and it'll be be cloudy this afternoon for southern England, Wales and parts of Northern Ireland. Showers will ease in the southwest and it'll be dry across Scotland. Highs today of 15 Celsius in London and Cardiff, 14 in Manchester, 13 Celsius in Edinburgh and Belfast. That's the BBC News at 1:05.
Thank you so much.
Jeremy Vine. Listen live on the